All right, cell processes. So by now we know that the cell is the first level of life. So in the organization of life, the cell is the first thing that's considered a living thing on its own. Cells are made of matter, and the most basic unit of matter is a single atom. These atoms are held together by energy created by the three things that make up atoms, which are protons and neutrons, which are in the nucleus, and electrons, which go around the nucleus, kind of like a cloud, like they orbit the nucleus. These atoms make up all matter and are held together by chemical energy. An element, like you see on the periodic table, right, like that thing that's all these, are made up of one kind of atom. For example, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, hydrogen, sulfur, and these single elements each atom has a certain amount of protons, a certain amount of neutrons, a certain amount of electrons. So then, can you see this one at all? Mm-hmm. Okay. Atoms combine and create other things. So you have compounds, molecules, ions, and mixtures. A molecule is when you have the same kind of atom that combines together. So, for example, in the atmosphere, we breathe oxygen, but it's not just one atom of oxygen. It's not one element of oxygen. It must be two combined together. Okay, it's a diatomic molecule. We don't breathe in O1, we breathe in a combination of two oxygen molecules. So these two oxygen molecules are combined together in the atmosphere, and that's what we breathe in. Okay, that's a molecule. Combination of two or more of the same atom or element. A compound is when you have exact combinations of different kinds of atoms. For example, water. Water is always two hydrogen combined with one oxygen. Okay? An ion is created when that atom loses. Remember we said an atom has protons and neutrons inside, and then electrons that are spinning around on the outside. Okay, so when that atom either loses or gains an electron, it creates an ion. Okay, for example, table salt, which is a combination of sodium and chlorine. Okay, when those two things get together, the sodium actually loses an electron to the chlorine. When it loses an electron, electrons are negatively charged, remember? So when it loses that electron, the sodium is going to take on a positive charge and attract the chlorine, which is going to take on the electron, which is going to give it a negative charge. So those two things are attracted to each other. Mixtures, so all of these things, once they combine with something else, they take on a third or a brand new characteristic, okay? They no longer have their individual characteristics. Kind of like when you get married, you're no longer an individual, right? But a mixture is when two things get together and those two things still retain their individual characteristics. And there's two kinds of mixtures. You can either have a solution, which if anybody's ever made sweet tea or lemonade, you've mixed the sugar and the water together, you've created a solution. Those things are evenly distributed throughout the entire thing. So the goal, right, is for that first glass of sweet tea to be just as sweet as that last glass, right? But then you also have other things that are called suspensions. And this is kind of like the blood that goes through our bodies. If the blood was not constantly being mixed up and sent around our body, pumped around our body by the heart, it would eventually separate. Okay, the red and white blood cells would sink down to the bottom and leave the plasma or whatever else at the top. So that's a suspension, right? So if you ever taken like water and put dirt into it and spun it, as it was spinning, that dirt and the sand was all over the place. But then you let it sit for a little while, all that stuff is going to sink to the bottom. So that is a suspension.